when you can show up consistently, people watch and people know and come to respect that. That's where we can also be leaders as well. So even when we're dissed, right? Even when someone doubts us or disrespects us, the majority of people have observed how you conduct yourself and your work ethic and your ability to deliver. And I think we can rely on that even when someone may, spew words that are hurtful. Many times, our actions can speak louder than words.
Welcome to the Licensed to Live show, where professionals, doctors, champions, VIPs, attorneys, and those in public office discover strategies that help you restart and gain what is lost when you find yourself accused. If another has doubted your integrity, questioned your credentials, or caused your actions to come under scrutiny, you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you have never felt the knot in the pit of your stomach when legal papers are served, the heartbreak of disappointing your family when the lock clicks shut on handcuffs, or had to appear before a board of review, then be aware, the longer you serve, the more likely you are to find yourself under the microscope of those who judge. Prepare yourself for this uncomfortable possibility. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jarrett Patton.
Welcome to this episode of Licensed to Live. My name is Dr. Jarrett Patton, and I'm your host for our journey together today and every day you choose to listen to this show. If you or anyone you know has been dissed by healthcare, please invite them to join us along this journey. Just go to your favorite podcast player and subscribe. I'm literally everywhere now. So while you're there, please rate this episode and give me honest feedback so I make sure I provide you with the most up-to-date information about career and life changes. So by now, you guys have listened to my show and you kind of know the theme about being dissed and what it means. But just if you're a new listener, dissed can mean anything, and it could be disengaged, disgruntled, disenfranchised, dissatisfied, you name it. If you are having these troubles in your career, this is the show for you. Today, we will be talking with Dr. Bonnie Mason Simpson, an orthopedic surgeon, a founder of a nonprofit. She also founded Beyond the Exam Room University and is a best-selling author. So today we'll learn a lot more about Dr. Bonnie and her path into and through orthopedic surgery to an entrepreneur despite being dissed. And now a word from our sponsor. If you feel unfulfilled in your career, the Licensed to Live coaching program is exactly what you need to get back on track. Looking at your background, purpose, goals, and objectives, we craft a plan that will serve you for years to come as you accomplish your goals. We look at finances, confidence, credibility, business strategies, and much more to help you create freedom and fulfillment while obtaining your own license to live. Unlike other programs that focus on mindset empowerment or leadership development, the License to Live program is designed specifically for you. Each program is carefully individualized to give you exactly what you need to attain the next level in your career or business. This is not a program to simply get you from one job to the next. The Licensed to Live program is designed to help you free yourself from the handcuffs that tend to hold you back. This month, we are giving away free coaching sessions. Make sure to make your appointment with me at timewithdrjarrett.com. That's time with, spell out the word doctor, J-A, 2 R's, E, 1 T.com. See you soon. Welcome to License to Live, Dr. Bonnie. Tell me a little bit about what drew you into medicine and taking that path to orthopedic surgery in the first place.
This was not one of the stories you've heard where people say that, well, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, even from an early age, like 5 years old. That wasn't me. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I was going to stay in school for a while upon the advice of my dad, who said, honey, you have expensive taste, so you're going to need to be in school for a long time. I said, well, I can do that because I like making A's. And I said, well, we'll see what happens. So really in high school, I had several leadership positions, but I was very active. So between cheerleading and running track, I actually was injured and I had a severe hamstring pull my junior year in high school, and required a significant amount of physical therapy and rehabilitation. So I come home one day, Dr. Jarrett, and I say, Mom, I want to be a physical therapist. And she looked at me and said, why not be the physician that gives instruction to the rehabilitation team about what to do with the patients? And I was like, that sounds really good. I had never thought about it from that perspective, but essentially she was saying, level up, think higher,
Wow.
Think to your highest capacity. That's what she was saying. So I appreciated that encouragement, because it was just with that one, infusion of motivation and broadening my mindset for my mom. I was like, okay, I'll be a doctor. And it was really that simple. So from that point forward, I had to find my path. Now, I wasn't sure what type of doctor I wanted to be, but I knew I was going to be pre-med. So I matriculated into Howard University, HU, on a full scholarship, academic scholarship. I was a chemistry major and did very well in school. I finished magna cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa, and matriculated into medical school, into Morehouse School of Medicine on full scholarship as well. And it was at that point I was investigating the multiple avenues with which I could become essentially a sports medicine physician, which is what I wanted to be ultimately at that time. And so I looked at all of the options, and orthopedic surgery, was a very, active mode of medicine and highly rigorous and highly competitive. That was my chosen route, despite going to a medical school where the emphasis was on producing primary care physicians. So I actually had to take time to look outside of my institution to find community resources, community mentors, and develop my own network within the city of Atlanta, above and beyond my med school requirements. So throughout medical school, I met with one surgeon in particular, Dr. William Craven, who welcomed me into his office, into his operating room when I had on weekends and when I had half days maybe in medical school, to give me that exposure. Essentially, it was persistence that paid off, because at some point, I believe I might have been a second year medical student, having driven all the way out to Decatur to his office time after time. He says, well, I suppose you're serious because you keep showing up. Because of that, he said, well, so let me introduce you to my classmate, who happens to be a Black woman, orthopedic surgeon, of whom I had never met one before. Come to find out, she was the first African-American woman to become board certified in orthopedic surgery in the country. Yes, exactly. She's my mentor to this day. Yes. And so the power of persistence, the power of networking, going outside your comfort zone, no one's going to hand it to you. You have to go get it for yourself still. And now we have the advent of the internet. That was not in existence back then. Mm-hmm. So this was all phone calls on landlines to her office, hoping she was available, trying to make appointments, and mailing. I mailed her my CV and my personal statement. This was in snail mail, via snail mail. So, and this is how we built this mentoring relationship. And she took me under her wing and then introduced me to the chair of orthopedic surgery at Howard University. And that's where I ultimately matched for my residency after doing 1 year of general surgery at UCLA. And let me just speak to the dissing that took place in this part of the process of our story so far.
Oh, no, not another test.
Yes. Essentially I was, I was relatively, petite compared to yourself. You're 6'5", I'm 5'6", right? 100, at that point I was like 115 pounds wet. So I did not fit the mold. It was the exact polar opposite of the prototype or prototypical orthopedic surgeon. So I was, I had like 4 out of 3 strikes, right? So I was a woman who went to historically Black colleges and institutions, who, didn't even have orthopedic surgery in her medical school. And I didn't have a large network, but I had the right network.
Yes. You clearly spent a lot of investment up front in your very early career, building your own network, which on top of medical school and then going off to residency is already enough to do. And you guys have heard me say this on this show. You've seen my blogs. Making connections is essential to any step in your career. And Dr. Bonnie, for you to even understand that and know that from the very outset of your career is incredible. And the way you spent the time to build it with all of the work and pounding the pavement and you're right, phone calls and snail mail and all of this to get you to where you needed to be, which ultimately was into your orthopedic surgery residence. That deserves accolades in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, the biggest diss in all of that, thank you so much. The biggest diss in all of that, with all 4 of those strikes, people were like, there's no way you will be an orthopedic surgeon. A little black girl from a little black school? Absolutely not. Like, please think about the other O, OB-GYN. Love my OBs. It was actually my backup specialty choice. I had to perpetuate the thought that I might actually be doing OB because of the primary care emphasis at my school at the time. But I knew I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon after a 2-week rotation. And, Dr. Jared, I let the diss fuel me. I let the doubt fuel me. I said to myself, I'm going to give this absolutely everything I have. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to do everything on my sub-I rotations that I'm supposed to do. And, those 30-day auditions, I had 3 of them. And I said, I'm going to be, by way of performance, the best residency candidate that you've seen, male or female, 6 feet or 5 feet. I made that commitment to myself. And I said, thereby, if it does not work out, I will be okay because I will rest knowing that I did everything that I could have done. I won't leave any stone unturned. I will explore every possibility. So I will rest well knowing I did everything I was supposed to do. So if the good Lord sees fit for me not to match in orthopedics after I've done all I could do, I know that's not for me. And he has something better and something else for me. So I was completely okay with that. I was absolutely okay with that because I knew I was going to walk in and give it 110% every single day.
And that confidence, that drive, using those disses to fuel your next level of yourself, all of these things you implemented, sounds like from the very beginning in order to get yourself going and get yourself down that orthopedic career path. And I heard you say that you are not giving up on this and you just continue to go and work at it and work at it and work at it until you achieve that goal.
Credentials verified.
Yes. Well, that it was also an exercise in divine order, right? Because, for me to have, I literally chose Dr. Craven's name out of the phone book at that time as an orthopedic surgeon to shadow. And he welcomed me. And he happened to be the classmate of Dr. Claudia Thomas, the first African-American woman to be board certified in the country, who happened to know Dr. Richard Grant, who was the chair of orthopedic surgery at Howard University, my chosen program. Because at that point, Howard University Hospital had graduated more women in orthopedic surgery than any other program in the country.
Wow.
And I knew for a fact that I needed support because my parents had always been supportive. I'd had a great network of support that, I invested in, right? And I had friends and families, members and colleagues, all of whom were very supportive. Not that it wasn't going to be tough, but I knew that they had a vested interest of recruiting and retaining women all the way through matriculation and residency. So I said, that's going to be my target program for the series of connections to play out the way they did. That's God. Like, I didn't have anything to do with that. All I had control over was showing up and being my best self.
That's right. And these divine interventions throughout our life, sometimes they're gentle, sometimes they're urgent, but it's that pathway that leads you to something that, well, maybe you didn't see coming, but all of those little connections, and especially when you're thinking about just taking a name out of a phone book. I mean, that's truly divine inspiration and divinely created.
Divine order. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, as you were going through your career as an orthopedic surgeon, now you kind of graduated and going on. How did you kick off your career after residency?
Well, a few more interesting things actually happened during residency. Essentially about halfway through residency, I realized I was pledging a fraternity. I probably recognized that earlier on. So I was pledging this frat as a girl, right? As a woman. And so, the process, was similar to that of hazing, because this was before work duty hour restrictions. And I really had to go through a major process of learning to adapt to the environment that I was in. I was not going to change a predominantly male field, but I had to, as a woman, learn how to adapt to, being in the boys' club. I had to evolve my level of sensitivity such that I could really create a fine line between these are the guys just being guys and the guys that have gone too far. And so, I developed a method of setting boundaries for, myself being surrounded by these guys. And of course, you guys are going to be guys. And so anytime, they went a little too far with a joke, I would ball up a piece of paper and throw it across the room like a flag on the play during football. So anytime they saw that flag, they were like, okay.
Wow.
Too far. So it was a subtle, right? It was a subtle boundary that I was setting, like, okay, guys, you did too much. You went too far. But that was empowering for me. And I think it helped to build up some respect from the guys with respect to me in the program, because they were like, okay, well, we won't, we'll respect her, the fact that she's here and she actually is part of us. So I really think that helped to create, the brotherly sisterhood that, I was welcomed into at some point. Because, I didn't ask them to change, but they saw me adapting, but they knew I also had a level of respect that I expected from them. And I think that went a long way.
Yes. I mean, clearly, knowing that you were in such a male-dominated field, that you were trying to do what you could do to put your best self forward, as you say. And it was a culture that was permissive for probably a lot of stuff that really wasn't into your core value. So you actually had to design a system to be like, all right, guys, I can't control you and patrol you all the time. But you know what? If you've gone too far, let's think about what you're saying and what you're doing, and commanding the respect for yourself, and knowing that you're just as credible as everyone else in that group, that they had to stop and listen and alter their behavior. So yet another task on top of the rigors of just going through the curriculum and training that you had to place on yourself. Incredible, Dr. Bonnie.
Well, and that was not, that's not a solo effort. I was, as Shonda Rhimes says in her book, The Year of Yes, if you're the first, only, or different, you are bringing something unique to the table. But once again, you have to learn how to adapt. But from a leadership perspective, my chair, Dr. Grant, recognized that I was one of two women in the program. And this speaks to the opportunity for those who are in the majority in any situation. So at Howard University, race was not an issue, but I was in an all-male program with two women. So the majority representation was male, and it was the opportunity of the leadership within the program to really set the tone for the residency program about how the guys and the women would interact. For women in a predominantly male field, issues of sexual harassment, any, discrimination based on gender, those are real issues, and those are real things you have to contend with. And women going into this field know that. We know that we have to have a thicker skin but we also know there's a line to be drawn. But what I respected about the leadership at Howard University in the Department of Ortho with Dr. Grant was that he drew the line and set the tone from a leadership perspective on day one. And he indicated, he said, look, there will be no sexual harassment in this program. And Dr. Grant, Dr. Jared, he's kind of like you, big guy with a big booming voice, prototypical orthopedic surgeon. And, just big and scary, the nicest guy on the planet. But, ultimately, he told the guys, he said, if there's going to be any sexual harassment in this program, you're going to have to sexually harass me first. So that pretty much shut it down.
Wow.
So immediately he created a safe and equitable learning environment for me and for the other woman in the program. And so as leaders, I think we underestimate our capacity, ability, and responsibility to create these safe environments for those who are under our leadership. And so I would like to encourage, your listeners and anybody who has the opportunity to be in leadership to think about how to create safe spaces for, those who are leading, because that was pivotal for me. That was pivotal. I did not have one issue with sexual harassment the entire time I was in residency because of that.
And when you set the tone from the top, people will listen. They absolutely will listen. And you were a part of this, but the tone and the expectation was set that we're not having this type of behavior. We're having a professional environment, and wanted you to have the greatest chance of success as possible. And creating a safe space is one of the ways where people can feel empowered to speak up when they're being wrong. Having that safe space gives people the time to really share their true feelings and having that mutual respect in that inclusive environment. So having that type of setup in that era of medicine is truly ideal. And you're right, and this is before work regulations and work law and all of that changed. So it truly was a different era in medicine that your training opportunity was made whole by great leadership and leadership opportunities, and you being able to flourish by just being you.
The culture of any organization or environment is set by the leadership. And so that supportive environment, meaning we're going to make sure that everybody has what they need to be successful. Everybody's going to have to work their butts off. Like it was true hazing, but everybody had what they needed. It poured over onto me when, as a PGY4 going into my PGY5 year, so my next to the last year of training, 5 years of training, I should say, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And in a very short period of time, I got very sick very quickly. And I had to be medicated using medications that were infused via IV, which meant I had to go to the infusion center where other patients, cancer patients, were actually receiving chemotherapy drugs. And the strength of the medications that I was receiving was such that it would really wipe me out. I was so sick, mainly due to the side effects of the medication.
Oh my.
For the first time in residency, I would miss a day or two of work. And for me, missing a day was like against the core of my being, because I knew, as the person who was the first, only, or different, if I gave folks any ammunition, that I could start to be doubted, right, as to my capability or capacity to actually finish this race. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I was sick and now here I am taking this medication, now I'm missing a day, it was terrifying because, now what's going to happen? But I called one of my other attendings, Dr. Thompson, one day when I was particularly ill, post medication infusion, and I apologized profusely for not being able to come and for missing his cases. And he said to me, Bonnie, if you're not here, something must really be wrong. Mm-hmm. And, when we are able to support our young people in that way, I think that's what helps to ensure a confidence, right, in that person, in the young person, but also it speaks to the fact that people have been watching me the entire time, right? my faculty, my attendings have been watching my work ethic and the type of person I was throughout my residency training.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, once there was a break in that pattern of my, attempts at excellence daily, my husband calls it a spirit of excellence. But once there was a break in that pattern, then I got the benefit of the doubt. And I think it's important for everyone to know that I think that's earned. I don't think it's a given. And when you can show up consistently in your spirit of excellence every day, people watch and people know and come to respect that. That's where we can also be leaders as well. So even when we're dissed, right? Even when someone doubts us or disrespects us, the majority of people have observed how you conduct yourself and your work ethic and your ability to deliver. And I think we can rely on that even when someone may, spew words that are hurtful. Many times, our actions can speak louder than words.
Absolutely. And you spent years building up your currency and your credibility bank account. That, when it was time to make a little withdrawal for somebody, you couldn't make it on this day or that day because of everything you're going through. People didn't even second guess it because they know that you're the person to show up and get the job done, no matter what's going on. And having that understanding, both as a leader and as an individual, it helps you to be able to overcome a lot of these things if you had all of this currency deposited up front, because you're right. It's not a given for any person to be able to just say, okay, well, yeah, I'm sure something's going on and we'll write that off with no penalty. But a lot of times you have to earn it. And you spent all of those years and the previous training years building that up. So people knew your personality. They knew your work ethic. They knew all of these things. People wanted you to be around and they wanted you to succeed. But you have this bout with rheumatoid arthritis that was debilitating and required a tremendous amount of medication, very strong medication that literally wiped you out. It was all okay. And you had your attendings, you had your other colleagues that were willing to support you. And that, I'm sure, was very meaningful for you as you were continuing to battle the illness and go through your training.
Absolutely. I did wind up having to retire about 4 years later from clinical medicine because the rheumatoid arthritis affected my right elbow, and I'm a right-handed surgeon.
Oh, no, not another test.
So within a short period of time, I found myself grieving the loss of the career that I worked so hard for. So that I thought that was a diss because I was like, okay, God, what is up with this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? Wait, what? I go from being, the musculoskeletal surgeon to a musculoskeletal patient. Like, that's ironic.
Wow.
And, this was amidst building a private practice with Dr. Grant, whom I referred to earlier, who left academics and asked me to join him in private practice. And it was during the time that that was those early days in practice where, I was really running the practice, not passively, but actively as the CFO and COO of Grant Orthopedic Bone and Joint Surgeons, where it was significantly stressful to make financial, contractual, and business decisions every day on no foundation. I mean, we're clinicians, we're surgeons, and that's all of us, right? Coming through medical school.
That's right.
You don't get any of this business stuff. We know no education or foundation around how to hire people, fire people. What do HR requirements even include? What does fiscal responsibility of a business entail? What is this equipment lease for these computers that we absolutely need today? Not to mention, commercial leases. And I mean, there were just a battery of decisions that I was making in this early on in this practice with no foundation, and that heightened my stress level significantly and exacerbated, I believe, the advancement of my disease because of the stress. And so, we know that autoimmune diseases are usually stress induced. So here I was going from residency into running a practice, and I was actually increasing my stress level. So I was actually quite sick while I was running that practice. And it was at that, about 3 years in, so it was about 4.5 years after I was diagnosed, that I wound up clinically retiring. I continued to see surgically retiring. I continued to see patients non-surgically for another 2 years before retiring completely from clinical medicine. So I felt that was a diss from life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is that about? Not happy about this. I will say that I was quite clear due to the intensity of my residency training. And as abruptly as it came to an end, I said, now I didn't go through all of this for nothing. Now, Lord, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm going to affirm that this was for some purpose that I probably can't even see right now. So, because I did not pledge a fraternity for nothing. I know that isn't the case.
The comeback.
So, sure enough, I had already embarked upon some of my work to expose students back at Morehouse School of Medicine to orthopedic surgery, and subsequently founded Nth Dimensions, NTH Dimensions with an S.org. And it's we're celebrating now our 15th year of increasing diversity in orthopedic surgery, and now radiology, dermatology, and physical therapy for students across the country. And we're the most successful GME pipeline program in the U.S., having awarded at this point, we're about $1.5 million in internships, scholarships, and grants over time to students as they successfully matriculate into these fields. And then also, too, as you know, Dr. Jared, I took notes for those few years when I was running my practice on everything I didn't know from a business and financial perspective that I thought we should have been taught. I joined forces with a business partner, Dr. Karina, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and we wrote a textbook called The Business of Medicine and Healthcare Economics for Residents and Fellows. We then founded Beyond the Exam Room, which is our educational firm, which works to educate our colleagues about all of the essential but non-clinical things that we aren't taught in medical school or residency pertaining to and as supplements to the clinical education that we receive. And so through our webinars, online courses, and live classes, we're able to educate hundreds of doctors across the country about the business of medicine. And my niche and my love is contracts and negotiations. So out of that very painful period birth to organizations wherein I've been able to provide and serve our fellow physicians in a way that I know I would not have been able to do if I were actually in the operating room. I know that for a fact. It's taken me some time to recognize that, but even this diss from life led to something bigger than myself. I reassure and I try to reassure, our colleagues, Dr. Jared, all the time that if you're going through something really painful, it's trying to get your attention. It may be asking you to shift, but it's definitely a growing pain. My growth pain was rheumatoid arthritis and the subsequent excommunication that, that's a one-way ticket out of the operating room, forced me to think about what else I was going to do and how else I was going to leverage my multiple intelligences. And at the time, I knew I loved to teach. And Morehouse School of Medicine had an executive faculty development program at the time. And my dean, Dr. Nigel Harris, encouraged me to enroll in that program to learn how to become a better teacher, publisher, writer. And by enrolling in the program, I looked up and my future husband was in that class as well.
Wow.
I got a husband out of it too.
You can't make this up.
You can't make this up.
You hear, fire starters, do you hear what is happening here? I mean, so we're talking about someone that has gone through so many years of training to only at the beginning of their true career have a life setback that really prohibited her from being able to practice in the way that she was trained. And so many people have these life events that slow them down and prevent them from being that ideal doctor or being that clinician they spent so much time training for, and they think that their life is over. I want you to hear Dr. Bonnie's story here, and that this was only a door and an avenue for her to do something much bigger with her life had she been able to continue on clinically. So she started a nonprofit, Nth Dimensions, and has really increased diversity in medicine and orthopedic surgeons. She has started Beyond the Exam Room, which is something else that doctors really should listen to and think about, because as you said, as you were running that practice and being the management of the practice in your career, we just don't get that kind of training. That is something that is lacking. People train us as physicians to see patients. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but you're trained to see patients. That's what they want us to do. They want us to work for institutions, hospitals. They want us to work for surgery centers. They want us to see patients. And the more patients, the better off it is for the people that own these entities. And that can be tough because it gets into our own mindset, making us think that's all that we can do. And so we have to break outside of that cycle in our own thinking and say, well, there's a lot more to me than just being a physician or a dentist or a pharmacist or an accountant or any professional where you've done lots of training to practice your craft. You took this, and I'm sure you had dark days, as many of us do, that had sudden career changes, like I did, like you did. You had to take some downtime, and you were feeling some blue moments. But again, just as you did early on, you used it as a motivator to help get you to that next level. And so you've created lots of things since that time that has really impacted the lives of so many people on so many ways. And really, when you look at the scheme of things, you're just beginning. You've been doing this for a while, but this is still the beginning.
Yes, we're just getting started. This is great. Absolutely.
But one of the main frustrations with physicians in healthcare now is that hospitals and health systems have so much power. And all too often people sign their employment contracts and they don't really understand it. And maybe something goes wrong years later and they realize they have been duped. They signed something that probably they shouldn't have signed. And this is one of your specialties that you really like to use in Beyond the Exam Room. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, absolutely. I've come to recognize and describe for physicians that your employment contract is the single most important document in your life because it governs your professional responsibilities, duties, and requirements. And to the extent that it defines how often you work, what type of work you do, what type of stress you'll be under, how often you're on call, that has a direct effect on your availability to be present for your family. It has a direct effect on your time to, be the person outside of medicine that you want to be. So I look at the contract as the ultimate work-life integration document. What you sign up for in that contract will dictate both your life professionally and personally. And I don't think most of us look at it like that. Secondarily, we also take for granted that your employment contract, especially in these days, which represent the corporatization of healthcare, that your contract represents your interests. And nothing could be further from the truth. In the majority of contracts that I've reviewed, Dr. Jarrett, over the past 3 to 5 years now, I've seen a shift such that physicians, I would say all employees need to understand that, a contract favors the author of the contract. The writer of the contract is going to make sure they write in everything that they need from you on their terms. So when we sign our contracts without reading them, sometimes ill-advised or under-advised, we have not, in many cases, negotiated for what we need and what we want to be in that contract. And so what that means, Dr. Jarrett, is day one, we're walking into a situation that does not support who we are and our fundamental core, fundamental core of what we need. So we're already behind the 8 ball, right? So we're already in a situation where we walked in and we're stressed because we're not getting our needs met, but the company's getting everything it needs out of us. So it is our obligation. It is mandatory. It is critical. It is essential that we negotiate our contracts. It is absolutely mandatory that we do so, and that's intimidating to a lot of people, but also to physicians, because we've been taught to be, congenial. We have to work together, and we feel like this is an adversarial event. Yes. Actually, negotiating can be congenial. It does not have to be adversarial. And if we change our mindset once again and look at this as a critical conversation versus hearing that word negotiation in our heads, we can do this. We have critical conversations, Dr. Jared, every day with our patients. Every day, right? So we can do that. We can do this.
Absolutely. Folks, you have to think about it, because these employment contracts, and I've seen it, people go online and they're making a rant about something.
Yep.
Sometimes people get so excited about the offer. The only thing they're looking at is the salary. Oh, that looks good. Let's go. And particularly with large employers, large medical groups, they have a boilerplated employment contract that is exactly what they want for their individual, so that it has everything in it that they need and they want. And all they do is change that salary number, and there you go. And so people don't take the time and look or get the advice of someone like you, Dr. Bonnie, who can help review some of these things. And then you're stuck in a place or an environment you don't like, with people that don't have the same goals as you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you absolutely must negotiate. I agree with you, Dr. Bonnie. Negotiation is the key here.
It really is. It's standing in our voice, asking for what we want and what we need. Nobody's going to do that for us. And we have to change our mindset and our expectation that somebody else will. This is what we ask our children to do, right? What we try to teach them to do. Well, here we are in, adult clothes and, a white coat, having to do the exact same thing. And if we don't negotiate, then they got us, right? And then that's when we feel, disempowered, isolated, depressed, and, ready to quit. When that's not who we're designed to be, but we also haven't been tooled to negotiate. So, as a physician coach and strategist, specializing in contracts and negotiations, my docs that I've worked with over time now, I've got a new nickname, Dr. Jarrett. I got a new nickname.
Tell me that.
Okay. Yeah. So they said, well, one of my friends texted me and took a screenshot of the text when it came up on her end. And so she renamed me the Olivia Pope for doctors. Because I tell you, I have helped doctors get out of some very, very horrible situations. And you know what? I said, I like that. I can go with that. Yes. I'm in agreement with that. So that's what I spend my time doing. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing as well.
That's great. That's a great nickname and a great compliment to really show what you've been going through and what you've been able to do and what you're trying to help people just figure out life, because medicine certainly hasn't gotten less complicated as things go on. So those one-page contracts with, maybe a paragraph or two and a salary are long gone. And you're now being faced with, attorney drafted, several page documents that you really need someone with some expertise to take a look at to help get you through that. Dr. Bonnie, where can people find out more about you?
But I'd be happy if your listeners followed me on Instagram at Dr. Bonnie Mason. I also have my Instagram page for Beyond the Exam Room. So at Beyond the Exam Room. Also at In Dimensions, so that if you have any young people that are interested in going into a competitive field of medicine, please have them follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. You can follow Beyond the Exam Room on Instagram and on Facebook as well. As a medical student, resident, fellow, or physician, please follow us there. And you can also go to my website at www.beyondtheexamroom.co. And if anyone needs any input on negotiating a contract, you can set up a discovery session call with me there on the website.
Wow, that is great that you gave us all that information. And folks, all of those links and where to find Dr. Bonnie will be in the show notes, as well as links to her organizations. So you'll be able to get direct access to her through there. Thank you for dropping so many jewels and telling your story of inspiration and your drive, whether this has happened to you in life, they happened to you in career. Dr. Bonnie, you found a way to get through them all and take you to a higher purpose, which is serving many more people, not only now, but for years to come. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jared. God is good, right?
God is good all the time. all the time. Is there anything else that you would like to say to our audience today?
No, just everyone hang in there. There's a purpose for your life. Progress is a process. It's never painless, and it's never painless. So you can rest assured that all will work out in the end.
Final judgment. Licensed to live.
I love it. Progress is a process. Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Bonnie, for coming on the show today. And when I have some great conversation like this, there's so many more things that we could talk about. I'm going to have to ask you to come back on a future episode.
I certainly will. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember, fire starters, if you or anyone you know has been disengaged, dissatisfied, disgruntled, disenfranchised with healthcare, please invite them along this journey. Simply go to your favorite podcast distributor and subscribe to Licensed to Live. And while you're there, please rate this episode and give me honest feedback so I make sure I provide you with the most up-to-date information about career challenges and life changes. Make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn. Tend to hang out there between episodes, giving lots of great posts, lots of interaction on Twitter as well. And you can find me at all of those places at Dr. Jarrett. Spell out the word doctor, J-A, 2 R's, E, 1 T. See you next time.
No matter how disheartening the moment of accusation sounds, how deep the pain of immobilization stabs, or how bleak your future looks, no one can take away your license to live. Keep Dr. Jarrett's expertise handy and unlock your future. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or another podcast player and subscribe right now to Licensed to Live. See you next time.